Okay, welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to be learning about the Haggadah this week and next week. And this week I chose something I think will be a little bit different, is that we're going to see an overview and analyze the Haggadah through numbers. And I'll explain that many times when we want to get into the deeper dimensions of the Torah, we do this by making correspondences, connections between words, themes, and in our case tonight, numbers. Right now, we're starting the book of Vayikra, and literally on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we put up the tabernacle. Before that, though, we had 5 parshas about building the Mishkan. And we learned that every detail of the Mishkan, every color, every material that was used, every number, where things were placed, how long, how wide, how tall, all the details bring us into the inner dimensions of the Torah. And in that case, the numbers are very, very important, how all the dimensions were. So it's the same thing with really any parsha, but especially with the Haggadah. As we're going to see, there are many, many connections that we can make through understanding the numbers that appear in the Haggadah, the basic structure of the Seder. So we're going to start, we're really going to do basically 3 numbers. 4 numbers, 4, 5, 15, and 50. And we're going to see that in a certain sense, we're going to go through an overview of the whole Haggadah by showing how these numbers keep on appearing and what the significance of it is. So we'll start with the number 4. The number 4 is very, very important to the actual structure of the Haggadah, because in a certain way, the Haggadah is organized around 4 cups of wine. This is the broader structure that we fit, as we're going to see. There are 15 steps to the Seder, and they're punctuated by drinking 4 cups of wine. And we're told in Kabbalah and Chassidut that these 4 cups correspond to the 4 letters of God's name. Because when we came out of Egypt, the whole teaching of the 10 plagues, what was God trying to teach the Egyptians? What was God trying to teach Israel? And we see that at one point, God says to Moshe, I only appeared to Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov with the name Kel Shakai. The name Yud-K, Vav-K, I did not make known to them. This is the 4-letter name of God. So just like the whole book of Exodus, which is Shemot means names. So just like the whole book of Shemot is about Am Yisrael, who guarded their names even in slavery, even in exile, how we became a nation. But even on a deeper level, it's about God revealing the name Yud-Keh Vav-Keh to the world and to Israel as well. So everyone asks, well, if you look in the book of Bereshit, we see that the name Yud-Keh Vav-Keh spoke to the patriarchs, to the Avot. So what did God mean that I only appeared with the name Kel Shakai, but the name Yud-Keh Vav-Keh I did not make known to them? So Rashi explains that the name Yud-Keh Vav-Keh in the context that it's being given over here means that God made promises to the patriarchs. And one of them was, I will give you the land of Israel for your children and forever. And so God says, I made that promise, but I didn't fulfill it in the time of the patriarchs. Now I am going to fulfill it by taking the Jewish people out of Israel, giving them the Torah, and then bringing them into the land of Israel. That is the revelation of the four-letter name of God. That is God fulfilling his promises. So the 4 cups of wine correspond to the 4 letters of God's name. Another connection, a very important connection, is that there are what are called 4 languages of redemption. And they are in a number of verses where God says that I will take you out of Egypt. I will save you. That is considered at the Red Sea. I will take you out through the 10 plagues. I will save you by taking you out of the borders of Egypt. I will redeem you by the miracle at the Red Sea. And I will take you to me as a people at the giving of the Torah at Sinai. So there's 4 languages of redemption. And these are symbolized in the 4 cups of wine that we drink, because we're celebrating the Exodus from Egypt and how God took us out and saved us and redeemed us and took us to him as a people. So now we have many, many connections. There's another opinion in the Talmud that when the butler and the baker came to Yosef when they were in jail, and they told him his dreams, and the butler explained his dream of seeing a grapevine and clusters of grapes in series of threes. So in that passage, the word cup is used 4 times. And since it was Yosef, by him being sold down into Egypt, which began the entire process of us going down to Egypt and becoming slaves, and then eventually coming out. And Yosef made the people promise that when you come out of Egypt, you'll take my body with you, because God will come and redeem you. So because the word cup is used 4 times in the passage of Yosef interpreting the dream of the butler, that the 4 cups correspond to that. Also, in the Haggadah itself, of course, we have the 4 questions. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh? 4 questions. And then we have what are called the 4 sons, or the 4 children. The wise one, the not so good one, call him wicked, the simple son, and the one who does not know how to ask. But again, 4. Over and over, we have the structure of 4. And really, the heart of the Haggadah is the 5th section, which we'll explain in a little while, which is really an answer to the 4 questions. And so the whole structure of the Haggadah is based on 4. If we go back even further, when God first revealed to Avram that his children would be strangers in a strange land and they would be oppressed, but eventually God would bring them out, he said, you will be there for 4 generations. The exile in Egypt will be 4 generations. So again, we see the number 4 coming up over and over again, and that's why they set 4 sons and 4 questions and 4 cups. In addition to this, according to tradition, we also have 4 exiles that we went through. And Seder night is about a lot more than just what happened to us in Egypt. It's really a time to contemplate, connect to all of our exiles and all of the miracles that happened to the Jewish people. So we started with the number 4, and we see how important it is. Now, the next number we want to analyze is the number 5. Now, this has many, many, many meanings here. And the first one is in the Sefer Yetzirah, we're told that the 12 months of the year correspond to 12 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And each one of the letters is the means by which these 12 months are created. They are the energy of the month. So the letter of the month of Nisan, the month of Pesach, is He, which is the 5th letter. So here, even before we get into the Haggadah, we see that the energy of the letter He is prevalent the whole month of Nisan. The chush, or the sense of the month of Nisan, is speech. And we're told that the speech is formed from five places in the mouth, from the tongue, the lips, the teeth, the palate, the garon, 5 different places where biologically we form our lips and our mouth to make letters. So the idea that this month is all about the letter He and speech, so that those go together perfectly. What's the first letter of the Haggadah? A He. And so the actual mitzvah, today we have 2 mitzvahs from the Torah that we fulfill on Seder night. One is eating matzah, and the other is telling the story of coming out of Egypt. It's actually one of the mitzvot of the Torah, is to relay to our children, or even just to ourselves, what happened to us in Egypt and how God saved us. So it's all about speech. The whole idea of the Haggadah is giving over the story. So now we see a very, very interesting thing. We said before all the different connections with 4. But when we look deeper, especially in Kabbalah and Hasidut, there's a hidden 5th letter in almost everything that we said. So let's understand this. We began with the idea that there are 4 cups of wine on Pesach night. But really, we pour a fifth cup. That's the cup of Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet. And this comes from a disagreement in the Talmud, whether there were four languages or expressions of redemption. Remember, we said them. I will take you out. I will save you. I will redeem you. I will take you to me as a people. But there's really a fifth one. And that's the next verse is, and I will bring you, Beheveti, I will bring you into the land of Israel. And the sages had a disagreement whether that should be included in the languages of redemption. And so the conclusion they came to was, we'll drink 4 cups, but we'll pour a fifth cup as, in a sense, like a compromise, to take both opinions into consideration. What's interesting to note, usually the cup of Eliyahu just sits on the table. About 500 years ago, the Maharal of Prague began drinking also from the fifth cup, because he said the time of redemption is getting closer, and it's time to start drinking the fifth cup, which represents God saying, I will bring you into the land. And here we are, 500 years later, here we are in Eretz Israel. So the Maharal picked up on something. Not that long afterwards, the Arizal also in Sfat said the redemptive process is beginning. It's starting. And so we really have 5 languages of redemption. And we said that those 5 levels of redemption and the 5 cups, now we have 5 cups, represent the 4-letter name of God. But when you look in Kabbalah and Chassidut, there is a 5th level of the name of God, and that's what's called Kotsoshel Yud. The first letter of God's 4-letter name is a Yud, and the tip of the Yud is called the Kotsoshel Yud, and it's considered a level in of itself. So here we have another hidden 5th. When we get to the 4 sons, so in modern times, this is many people include this in the Seder, that really in our day, there is a 5th son. Who is the 5th son? The one who doesn't even come to the Seder. Of course, this is tragic, but it's a reality. Even the so-called evil son, the Russia, he's at the Seder. He has his questions, he has his attitude, but he's at the Seder. We all know that nowadays there are many people who just don't come to a Seder. They probably don't even know when Pesach is. So that's a hidden 5th. The 4 questions, there's actually a hidden 5th question. And that is, at the time of the Talmud, there was a different question that was asked. And that was about the Korban Pesach that we ate at the Seder. But that is only when we have a temple. And now that we don't have a temple, so that question was replaced with the question of leaning. So again, here we have 4 questions, but we have a hidden 5th. And one more connection is, according to tradition, we have 4 exiles. And in order, they are Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome. So there's an obvious question here. What happened to Egypt? What happened to the first exile? Why is that not included? So again, there's actually 5 exiles, but we only talk about 4. And the Netivat Shalom, the Slonim Rebbe, gives an answer. It's not the only answer, but he gives the answer that the 4 exiles that we just named, Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome, they all occurred because of our own actions. In other words, all the prophets came and said, if you change your ways, there doesn't have to be an exile. The temples do not have to be destroyed. We didn't change our ways, and they were destroyed. So in other words, the exiles came about due to what we'll call a measure for measure, the results of our actions. But the Slonim Rebbe explains that the exile in Egypt had nothing to do with our doing wrong. It's not that we were perfect, but he said that the reason was a very different reason. And the reason was that for us to become the chosen people, for us to become the partner with God in fixing the world, we needed to experience the slavery in Egypt. It wasn't pleasant, but God, in his own accounting, felt that this was the proper, call it training, or proper experience that the Jewish people had to have in order to rise to their full potential. So now we've seen the number 4 and the number 5. Now we're going to go to the number 15. And this is very connected to a teaching that Rav Ginsburg gives over all the time. As you all probably know, Rav Ginsburg is a master of the numbers of the Torah, gematria, but not just gematria, not just the value of letters and how they translate into numbers and then you compare the words, but all kinds of different mathematical phenomenon that he uses to explain the deeper dimensions of the Torah. One of them is what's called the triangle of a number. So for example, we're going to take the triangle of 5. The triangle of 5 is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. That's what's called one of the first stages of the number 5 opening up to reveal deeper levels of the Torah. Or let's say the triangle of 4 would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, which equals 10. So the triangle of 5, because that's the number we just went through, also has tremendous significance in the Seder, and that's 15. The triangle of the number 5 is 15. If you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 15. So where do we see 15 in the Seder and in the Haggadah? So the first thing, and most important, is that there are 15 steps of the Haggadah. We go through 15 steps as we going up a ladder, as we get higher and higher and higher and higher, and we go through 15 steps. Now we're told why 15 steps? What's the significance? So this is one of the secrets of 15, is that the number 5 is so important to the Seder, as we just discussed. So when it opens up, it becomes 15. So it's a natural progression. But 2 of the reasons that are brought is David HaMelech wrote 15 what are called songs of ascent, Shir Hamalot. When we bench, so we say or sing one of the 15 Shir Hamalots. they're number 120 through 134 in Psalms. 15 consecutive Psalms from David HaMelech. Or, wait one second. Yes, I just wanted to make sure it was 120 through 134. And they say, why did David pick that number? Why 15 songs of ascent? Because he had what's called Ruach HaKodesh. He had divine inspiration. And he saw that in the temple that his son would build, there would be 15 steps that would go up between two sections of the temple. And because people ascended these steps, he wrote 15 songs of ascent. And that tells us something very important, that the whole Seder is this incredible ascent. It's electric. You could feel the energy is just, we're rising from level to level to level to level. Now, another very, very important thing that really impacts greatly the energy of the Seder is it's a full moon. It's the 15th day of Nisan. And the full moon energy is very, very, very strong. And so because it's the 15th of the month, it connects very, very much to the 15 steps of the Seder. Now, there's one other very, very important 15 is one of the most popular, call it songs during the Seder, is Dayenu, where we kind of go through how we were saved from Egypt. And at each step, we say that even if we only experienced this much of the redemption, Dayenu, it would have been enough. Now, many people actually turn that into a question and say, Dayenu? Like, what happens if we would have stopped at the second stop? Like, we wouldn't have gotten out of Egypt. But the idea is that in life, we have many, many different stops along our journey. And we have to learn to be appreciative and acknowledge and be thankful for every step we take along the way. So I'm mentioning this because Dayenu has exactly 15 Dayenus. The whole song is structured around the number 15. And we start like just getting out of Egypt, and we end up in complete redemption. In complete redemption. So this is another beautiful connection with the number 15. Okay, now with the time we have left, there is another teaching from Rav Ginsburg, where he reveals that throughout the Torah, when you have a number and you multiply it by 10, you get like an even greater fulfillment of the potential of the original number. So remember, we said when we talked about the triangle of 5 is 15. So we said that expands the hidden dimensions of the number 5. By multiplying times 10, it's an even a greater expansion. So if you multiply 5 times 10, you have 50. So where do we see 50 in the Haggadah? Where do we see 50 in coming out of Egypt? So the first thing is the amazing idea that when you go through the 5 books of the Chumash, the phrase Yetziat Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, appears exactly 50 times. 50 times in the Chumash. Of course, it starts in the book of Shemot. So this is telling us that, first of all, how important this idea of coming out of Egypt. We include it in our prayers in the morning and in the evening. And we have a special mitzvah to tell over the story on Seder night. So we became a people through the process, through the experience of coming out of Egypt. So the number 50 represents this fuller exit or exodus from Egypt. Now, this is manifest in a very important way, because when we celebrate coming out of Egypt, Seder night, when we finish the first day of Pesach, and as we start the second day, we begin counting the Omer. We start counting 49 days until we finish 7 complete weeks. And the 50th day is Shavuot, when we receive the Torah in Sinai. So here we see that Pesach and Shavuos are intrinsically tied together, and we actually even count the days. It's a mitzvah to count the days between Pesach and Shavuos. And we receive the Torah on the 50th day. So here the lesson is very straightforward and clear, that the purpose of coming out of Egypt, which is mentioned 50 times in the Torah, is to receive the Torah at Sinai, and then to take it and bring it into Eretz Yisrael. In other words, coming out of Egypt is only the beginning, really. It's not the end of a process, going from slavery to freedom. It's just the beginning. And freedom is completely in the context of the freedom that we receive by receiving the Torah and coming into Eretz Yisrael. So here we see very important connections with 50. 50 also, in the Torah, we have what's called the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, where we have, just like on a week, we have 6 days of work and a 7th day of rest. We have 6 years of work, agricultural work. Remember, at the time we came out of Egypt and we came into Israel, we were an agricultural society. And so we would work 6 years and then rest on the 7th. But just like we count 7 weeks, 7 times 7 weeks, 7 days times 7 weeks, 49 days, we also count 7 Shemitah periods. And the 50th year is called the Yovel year. And Yovel means freedom. Yovel is a year of total freedom, where debts are canceled, indentured servants go free, the land rests for an additional year. It's freedom. So 50 very, very much represents freedom. And in fact, one of the names, there's a discussion in the Talmud. What is the name of Mashiach? And there are different ideas that are explored. And one of them is Yanun. That will be the name of Mashiach, Yanun, which is very close to the letter Nun, which means 50. Why? Because Mashiach, he will bring freedom to not just Israel, but to the whole world. A type of spiritual freedom, a practical freedom, no more wars, no more bloodshed. So this is all connected to 50. And in fact, when we came out of Egypt, it says we came out chamushim, which is usually translated, we came out armed. And in Hebrew, chamush is armament, has to do with armament. But it's the same word as chamishim, as 50. In other words, we came out of Egypt in order on the 50th day to receive the Torah at Sinai. So what's interesting is there's a long section after we, one second. After we dip our fingers in the wine, or we spill the wine a little bit, and we go through the 10 plagues. So there's a discussion, how many miracles were there actually in Egypt, and how many at the Red Sea? And so it's a long discussion, and different rabbis. This is actually coming right before Dayenu, right before the reciting or singing of Dayenu. and they take different verses, and they try to show how many miracles, not just 10 miracles, but there were more and more and more. And all of them are in increments of 50. Some said there were 50 miracles. Some said there were 200 miracles. Some say there were 250 miracles. So all of them are increments of 50, because again, this number is very, very significant in the whole story. So let's try to put all of this together. Is that the structure of the Haggadah is, as we've tried to show, is based very much on the meaning of these numbers. And in a sense, what we just did like an overview of the purpose of the Seder. What are we trying to accomplish? And so what we can learn from this is how to apply this for the rest of our learning, because we see numbers all over the Torah, and we might think is, first of all, why did the Torah have to tell me how wide something is, or how long it is, or how many years someone lived? Why all of the numbers? So, but through the exercise that we did tonight, so this is like, we'll call it a teaching, a training of when we see numbers in the Torah, our first question should be, what is this trying to teach me? What are the lessons here? Almost every number that I brought and their correspondences, there was a teaching attached to it. And so we can use the learning that we did tonight as an introduction to more than just gematria, more than just figuring out the numerical value of words and then corresponding them to other words to see deeper meanings. Of course, that's incredibly important in Kabbalah and Chassidut. Rashi uses gematria, the Talmud uses gematria. But what we did tonight was a little bit different, is that when we see certain numbers, not necessarily all in one portion, maybe you'll have a certain number and it will appear spread out through the whole Tanakh, the whole Torah, the whole Bible. So the idea is, if it says this number here, and it says it over here, and it says it over there again, what's the connection? And once you have the connection, then you could say, what's the teaching here? What can I learn from this? So we really went through 4 numbers tonight: 4, 5, 15, and 50. And we saw all of them were used by those that created the Haggadah to create it's like below the surface. Nowhere does the Haggadah make a big deal of the fact that there are 15 steps. That's what it is. And it doesn't explain why 4 questions and 4 sons and 4 cups of wine. And actually, something very interesting is we start with 3 matzahs. I didn't mention this before, but in the 4th level, the 4th step of the Haggadah, we break the middle one in half. And so now you actually have 4 pieces of matzah, not just 3. You have 4 pieces. So again, these numbers, they're below the surface. Someone might not notice this at all. But when you start noticing it, and especially, let's say, the number 4, we brought it back to the idea of 4 expressions of redemption. In other words, the redemption happened in stages. It went through 4 different stages. And so therefore, that's why the sages chose that there should be 4 cups of wine. And we discussed how do we get a 5th cup of wine? So all these things, there are reasons for why 3 matzahs. We're told the 3 matzahs represent Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and Cohen, Levi, and Yisrael. In other words, the Jewish people are divided into 3, call it segments, and the 3 matzahs represent Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, Cohen, Levi, and Yisrael. And the 4 cups of wine represent the matriarchs, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. So all of these numbers have tremendous significance. So I just want to bless all of us that more than just learning about the Haggadah tonight and the inner structure and the deeper connections that are happening here, is we use this as a way to further the way that we learn Torah, that we start seeing connections between words and numbers and letters. And that's how we get to the deeper dimensions of the Torah. And of course, Galei Nai and Rav Ginsburg, that is the main, let's say, mission here, is to expose people to these kind of teachings in order to inspire, inform, and give people the tools to learn the inner dimensions of the Torah.